Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. Today we are going to be doing a season review of 2024-2025. This is your show. We are live, so if you are joining us live, please drop your comments and thoughts as we go through the show. We're going to be talking about high points. We're going to be talking about low points. We're going to be talking about Fabian's first year in charge. We're going to be talking about the squad and, who we'd keep, sell and loan. We'll be talking about the summer and the off season, what that may bring with it. But before we dive into any of that malarkey, let's see who we've got on the show this evening. Joe, you're here with us. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Tom. I am knackered. I am sunburnt. My muscles feel like they're about to drop off because Mental Health United just yesterday did a 12-hour football marathon. I only managed 3 hours. I say only, but yeah, I feel like I did quite a good stint, and I got sunburnt. Andrew was there with me as well, so that was great. And I was trying to convince him to play, but. Maybe next time. Maybe next
time, indeed. I'm sorry to hear about your sunburn, Joe. Remember, keep drinking that vegan water. Keep applying the old aloe vera to the old head there, and you'll be right as rain as soon as you can. We've already got some people talking about the squad. Aaron Cashin, justice for him. We'll talk a bit about him in a bit, and you can let us know your thoughts about each individual player as we go through the squad list a bit later. We also welcome Andrew to the show. Andrew, my man, how are you?
Not too bad at all. Yeah, great seeing Joe yesterday, and all for a good cause. And yeah, I will eventually. Didn't quite have the right stuff with me at the time to be able to play, but next time, definitely.
That's what they all say. Yeah, Joe. Just before we dive into this evening's proceedings, I know that you wanted to have the floor just to open it up to something that's quite close to your heart. So take it away, mate.
Yes, please. So I would like people to take a look at the description of the podcast today. There is a link to a petition for there to be a debate sparked in government for increased funding for people with Parkinson's disease and implement the Parky Charter. We're creeping up towards 40,000 signatures. We need 100,000 signatures for there to be debate in Parliament. And it's something that's extremely close to my family. And I think it's only UK citizens can sign this petition. So if you are a UK citizen and you would like to help us out, please do go to the link in the description and sign the petition to help those affected and those who live with Parkinson's disease. Thank you.
Well said, Joe. And I just reiterate that, go check it out and put your name on it because it's an important thing. So good skills, Joe. Thank you for saying that. A lot of people in the chat already. Thank you so much, guys. And keep those comments coming in. Yes, Doom, we will be talking about 17-year-old Greek striker, Greek Dave 2. And we'll be talking about Promise David a bit later because I too am a massive fan of his. But that's all coming up later. We're going to kick off the show tonight, and I'm going to invite each of Joe and Andrew and myself just to have a couple of minutes to do a sort of an individual roundup of the season as a whole and maybe give it a mark out of 10. Obviously, it's quite difficult to summarize a whole season's worth of football in 5 minutes or so. But that's the challenge that Joe, Andrew, and myself have got. So I'm going to come to you first, Joe. I'm going to pick on you first. If you could just summarize your overall thoughts and feelings on 24-25 as a whole, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think for me, it was a big process of learning to trust the process, as Fabian Hürzeler liked to say. I think we were all quite excited when Fabian Hürzeler came in and spoke about challenging the establishment and wanting to sort of almost carry that Roberto De Zerbi-ness over of, look, Brighton is a big club, no, and sort of push us to that next level and maybe put that message in a different way for the squad to understand that they are challenging and they're worthy of challenging the big six, if you want to call them that. So obviously the season started in a really good way. I think pre-season we saw a lot of really promising stuff, and that carried on into the beginning of the season. As Hertz has mentioned, towards the end of the season, we've had to face a lot of adversity, and I think the squad have always overcome those barriers really well. And I think the overriding feeling this season is just being really proud of a young set of players and a young coaching sort of setup that they've learned these lessons together and they've had to learn really quickly. I've spoken a lot in my columns for The Observer about consistent inconsistency. And I think that's just sort of what has maybe made us miss out on Europe this time. But having those inconsistencies has allowed us to then learn what we need to do better. And you saw the game management towards the end of the season. It was pretty good. There were certain moments where a Pervis Estupiñán would take a shot rather than take it to the corner. And you just see Hürzeler going absolutely bonkers on the sideline. And you can't blame him because I'm sure that, that's been a huge sort of exposure for him in terms of his vulnerabilities when being a young coach. But then to see that the squad sort of come on from all the adversity, all of the challenges, and to get to 8th position and end the season in the way that they did has really sort of put me in my place a little bit. I was very negative in the middle of the season. The 7-0 loss to Forest, the 2-1 loss away at Crystal Palace when they were down to 9 men. I was absolutely fuming. But you always want to see how people react and how your squad react to those moments. So for me, at the end of it, is just one word, and that is proud. And if you want my season rating, I'd probably rate it at about. I think I give it an 8 out of 10. 9 would have been Europe. 10 is obviously winning a trophy or winning the Premier League. So I'll give it an 8.
Very, very fair, very fair. Mac, I'm just going to bring it to your comment before I go to Andrew for the same thing. Big Six doesn't exist anymore. Newcastle, Aston Villa have reached Champions League spots now. Man United and Tottenham finishing 16th and 17th. Chelsea weren't even in the Europa League this season. Need to start calling it what it is, wide open. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Mac. I think that we're going through a period of Premier League football where actually, if you can piece a run together and you can be consistent, then, look at Nottingham Forest. They were really knocking on the door for top 4 for most of the season. It was only in that last little bit that they sort of started to slide away from that. So, yeah, I think interesting times over the next couple of seasons. It'll be really interesting to see what the next 1 or 2 seasons bring. Especially if Manchester City do find themselves harshly punished. But more on that in a bit, maybe. Andrew, the floor is now yours. Same as Joe, if you could just sort of summarise the season as a whole and finish off with a mark out of 10, please.
Do you know something? I've been down to the training ground today because they're doing tours on the training ground. We have got some of the most unbelievable training facilities for these players. Seeing it firsthand makes you realise how lucky those players really are. And it just goes, can't understand the injuries, but that's another question for another day. The season overall has been, I would say, we've had our ups and downs. We've had some really, really poor performances. We've had some absolutely wonderful performances. You can understand why Hürzeler sometimes is screaming at the side of the pitch because as fans, when you see it live, you really want them to do what they're being asked to do. But I think overall, we've actually had a decent season. The only letdown has been that we've not got into Europe. You know, we're top 8 of the Premier League, and when Hürzeler come in, you wouldn't have thought that to start with, because it's taken a while for the team to gel with the way he works, with his processes, and it's like he says, you have to trust the process. You know, they work on it every day. You can see that by the facilities and what they've got there, and I think it's a stepping stone for the forthcoming season. And we can only get better as we go forward with the new season, you know. And you've just got to look at it and say to yourself, okay, accept where we are. You know, there are other clubs in a more difficult position than we are, and we've got to be proud of what the players have achieved, what the managers achieved, what the coaching people have achieved, because they've had a lot of hurdles with injuries. And to be able to finish the season in a top 8 position for a club like ourselves, that everybody, you know, back in the day when we first got promoted to the Premier League, said we didn't really have a chance of staying in the Premier League, and we're now coming into our 9th season. So delighted with the team, delighted with the club, and everybody in the background. You know, take your hats off to them, because, you know, we've got top class facilities. And we've got a wonderful stadium. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next season, because there's big things in the pipeline. You can see it and the way they're going to play. And yeah, so I'm gonna give it, you know, I'm gonna give it an 8, because I think 8th position is equal to, you know, giving 8. So
very
well
well
then,
said, Andrew.
Mr. Hostman, what about you then? How have you seen this season?
Ooh, you know what? I've been, was it Ronan Keating or was it Jack Albion that said, you know, life is a roller coaster. It's really difficult, isn't it? Really, really difficult, because before a ball had been kicked, I would have said top 10 would have been an achievement. You know, young manager, 31 apparently, or he was, brought in from, you know, St. Pauli, who'd been playing in the Bundesliga, to, you know, stepping into a club that had been led to Europe by Roberto De Zerbi. I would have, you know, bitten your hand off for a top 10 finish. And I think there were a lot of things towards the beginning of the season which perhaps set unrealistic expectations in terms of expenditure, how much money we went out and spent, because I think we were the 2nd biggest spenders in Europe, definitely top 2. We were, you know, some of the biggest spenders in European football. We obviously started the season with a bang, some really nice attacking football, and perhaps, you know, like many others, my expectations changed. And I think throughout the season, they really sort of changed, and it ebbed and flowed. One week I'd be absolutely buzzing. The next moment, you know, the next week I'd be furious. So I think that sort of summarizes the season, really. It was that inconsistent, you know, consistently inconsistent, as Joe says. So it was one that for a long time, it's almost like a sandwich. The beginning was really good. The end was really good. The bit in the middle, I was quite iffy about around Christmas. You know, and then obviously the run we went on where we didn't pick up a win in like 6 games or whatever it was. So there were definite moments, and there are moments that you can't really sort of, you know, when they happen, you mither and you fume about them for weeks. You know, we talk about Wolves, we talk about Leicester, Palace, you know, Forest, all these moments where you just sort of pulling your hair out for ages after and thinking this is such a missed opportunity, but actually sort of like towards the end of the season I found myself mellowing a lot, and for me I think the fact that we went into the final day of the season still challenging for Europe, still in that conversation, is a huge win. And I think when you look at the data, we finished with 1 less point than De Zerbi got when we finished 6th. You know, that's miraculous when you've got the injuries we've had. You know, I read a stat the other day that said we didn't field the same 11 in 2 consecutive games all season. And I was just thinking, that's bonkers, absolutely mental. Everyone goes on about like, oh, Spurs are down the bottom because, of all their injuries, blah, 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 blah. We finished 8th. And if that stat is true, which I've got no reason to believe it isn't, and we didn't feel the consecutive 11 for 2 games in a row, that's mad that we've achieved 8th. The fact that we went into the final game of the season, admittedly needing results elsewhere to go our way, which in and of itself sometimes frustrates me because I'm always like, you sort your own business out. But even that is a huge positive win. So I revert back to my before a ball had been kicked. Sorry, I actually said, yeah, the season has actually been a resounding success. There have been moments where it hasn't been successful and we've had to adapt or we've had to respond and we've had to sort of go, no, this isn't good enough. But I think it's a credit to Hürzeler that that's happened. And we'll talk about that in a moment because we're going to talk about Hürzeler's first season in charge. So for me, if I had to give it a rating out of 10, I'd probably agree with both of you. I'd probably give it a solid 8, because there are moments this season when it's been like in my head a 3 out of 10. Then there are moments where it's been like a 9 out of 10. So it's really fluctuated. And I was saying this today in our group chat, my expectations like ebb and flow like the waves in the ocean, because I think, when you set those high standards, if you dip below them, it's okay to call it out. And if you rise above it, you should also call it out and say, you know what, we're hitting well above what we expected. Great job, Fabian. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster of a season, but I think it's one that's been really successful. So credit to the team, credit to the staff, credit to Fabian. He's proved a lot of people, including myself, wrong. So let's talk about the man himself then. Let's talk about that man, Fabian Hürzeler. We appointed Fabian, I think it was about the 15th of June. Of course, his predecessor, Roberto De Zerbi, leaving the club last game of the season. It was announced and he did his speech and he said his goodbyes. I don't know about you two, but I loved De Zerbi. I love me a fiery character. It's why I liked He Who Should Not Be Named, Gus Poyet. So seeing him leave, it was difficult because he got us to reach a point in our history that I never, ever, ever, ever thought I'd see. So following on from him was always going to be a tough job. And I think, what's happened since and all that sort of stuff, and it's almost immaterial. How I felt when he left I was heartbroken. So when Fabian came in, it was a lot to take in. Obviously, a lot was made about his age, 31. Everyone was going on about, he's going to be younger than half of the squad and all this. But his first year in charge, Joe, how do you think it's gone?
Yeah, I think obviously taken over from such a big figure in Roberto De Zerbi, who's achieved what he achieved with us, as you say, was always going to be a really hard task. And somebody in De Zerbi that had so much personality and so much sort of charisma and passion on the sidelines and all that. And you're thinking, how are we going to match those levels again? But I think, Hürzeler came in and wanted to do things his way. And I think you have to give a lot of respect to a young guy who's going to come in and control a Premier League side, to have that confidence in himself, to go on and give the pre-season that he gave. And the start of the season was excellent. And I think a lot of people then suddenly thought, okay, he is a very, very competent manager despite his age. People talk about his age, they never spoke about the 9-10 years coaching experience he had before that. He retired early. He's a young coach, but he was an experienced coach. And I'd just love to see the growth in him. If you watch, for example, I was watching because I'm really sad, I was watching the pre-season tour videos back the other day because I miss Brighton already. And you can see the difference in how he commanded their attention to begin with. And if you compare that to the Brighton Unlocked video that was released a week ago, how he commanded the respect of the dressing room in his post-match sort of comments after Spurs. there's clear growth there, and that's what you want to see from your manager. And he's only going to grow with this football club because we're going to allow him to. Obviously, I was one of the people that after the 7-0 was calling for his head, but the club are doing it in the right way. They're sticking by him. They're allowing him to build something, just like we did with Graham Potter. We allowed him to build, and look where he left us in the Premier League. We talk about how he left us. Obviously, that left a bit of taste. But if this football club allows somebody to grow with them, good things will start to happen. So yeah, I mean, I now I can only say positive things about Hürzeler. So yeah, it's big credit to him and big credit to the club for sticking by him.
Yeah, I think that's all very, very fair, Joe. Andrew, what have you made of Fabian's first year at the helm, so to speak? Joe's obviously pointed there a lot about growth. Have you seen that growth in Fabian's tactics, his way, his mannerisms, the way he commands the squad from the touchline, but also in the dressing room as well?
Yeah, and I would say, put De Zerbi aside because he's out the equation. We've got Fabian. He's come in from St. Pauli. He's obviously won the league with them. He's taken on a squad that was obviously thriving from the last manager, which is a difficult thing to do because they're all kind of buzzing because of it. But he's had to get his tactics within, fermented within the team itself, within his backroom staff and everything else. He came in with literally, he's had to build his backroom staff because he came in with virtually nothing anyway. So, but and a credit to him, he's settled himself in. He knows what he wants. He's passionate about football. He's passionate about this club. You can see that, and that's what we love in a manager, and it's just, I think, as each game's gone through the season, you can see that not everything has gone to plan for him because, either one thing or the other or injuries, that's that type of stuff. But overall, I think he's been, he's had to fill big shoes, but he's done it in such a way that, we've all kind of gone away from the last game of the season not wanting it to end because he's had that influence on all of us as fans, So come next season, we're going to expect a little bit more of a higher standard because he's acknowledged that the standards that he's actually set haven't been met within himself because he always gives himself a lot of, he sets himself targets within himself. You can see that. And you can see where if he hasn't met them, he can be quite, he wants to do better. But yeah, it's a team it's a team that's working for him and they're working with him and they want to do whatever they can to make it a successful season. And you can see that by the dressing room and the way he gets through to the players and the amount of praising that he does with the players, and he always is pointing out the seniors and, what they have to look up to because, the youngsters, when they come through, there's a lot of talent within that team. It's unlocking it, getting it out there and be able to, do what's and win those games that he really wants to win.
Again, very well said, Andrew. Very well said. I think the key word that you've both mentioned there is growth, because I think for me, there have been moments this season where I have felt that Fabian has looked quite naive, and I've been quite vocal about that. But again, the fact that he has then reflected upon those moments and then changed things, unlike his predecessor, shows that he is willing to be reflective, that he is willing to grow, that he's willing to adapt. The case in point that I'd bring is the game against Chelsea earlier on in the season. Our high line was ridiculous, absolutely insane. And Chelsea were getting in behind us with such ease. But after that game, I don't think we saw a line that high ever again. He himself has said that after the 7-0 thrashing against Nottingham Forest, that he burned the team sheet afterwards because he'd realised that he had made so much, such a bad mistake. So it's really fantastic to see that he's grown this season. There were points at the start of the season I was disappointed that we didn't see his sort of St. Pauli style football with vacating the midfield, and this is like a tactic that's been used quite widely across Europe at the moment. And he sort of reverted to that 4-4-1-1 approach. And for a long time, I couldn't see the tactics. I know I'm not alone in that. And a lot of the sort of the criticism that was leveled at him was, "Oh, where is his tactics? There are no tactics. He's just relying on individual brilliance to sort of pull things together." And I think as the season has gone on, we've certainly seen a lot more sort of discrete tactics. Dagan points out really well this idea of always having that sort of late running midfielder coming into a space because someone like a Matoma drags two players out of position. And we've scored quite a lot of goals from outside the box this season, or had shots on target from outside the box because of creating this space. We've scored a lot of goals from set pieces this season, especially corners. Again, these are all parts of our tactics that apparently Fabian doesn't have. And at the start of the season, I was one of these people, again, that was quite critical. And I now reflect upon that myself and think that it was so difficult to see was because when under De Zerbi, it was so obvious. It was so obvious that this is what we were going to do. But then Fabian's come along, and it's very subtle changes to the way we were playing, and you can really see that growth over the season. There have been times this season where he's frustrated me, but there have also been times where I've been in awe of sort of like how he's sort of got the team turning around. I mean, the 7-0 loss to Forest, the next game we went and beat Chelsea twice in a week. That shows gumption. That shows someone who's willing to go take one on the chin and go, we go again. So I'm a big fan of the young German. I think he's had an exceptional season. Himself being a young coach, young squad, and oh, how my tune has changed. That's the biggest thing I can say. Really, I don't like being wrong, and I certainly don't like having to admit it on public podcasts. But I was wrong, and I think he's proved many people wrong. More power to him for doing that. So let's move on then, gentlemen. Let's talk about the highs and the lows, shall we? I'd like to get, if I can, from each of you, your highlight of this season. The moment this season could be a game, it could be a moment within a game, it could be something completely different. What was your highlight of the season, Joe? I'm going to come to you first.
You're always picking on me first, aren't you? I'm going to file to HR for bullying. No.
I am HR.
No, he is. That's very true. File shredded. My highlight of the season. Goodness me, there have been many good moments this season. It's so hard to narrow it down to one. So I'm gonna do a Dagan and give a podium for my highlights. Is that okay? Or am I taking the moment away from other people? Okay. So third for me would be beating the champions in the final 2 weeks. I think that was great. Was a result that nobody expected, but we really needed it in our race for 8th position. Put pressure on the teams below us to get results, and they couldn't get the results towards the end of it. So I think that shows a lot of bottle from us to keep going till the final moment. Second, I think I'm going to choose the João Pedro penalty against Fulham in the 98th minute, was it? 97th? I just don't think I've ever seen a goal that late, except for maybe Alexis McAllister's against United, and against a team that was historically not very good against in the Premier League. It felt like a lot of pressure was lifted from that moment. But the highlight for me would be the Carlos Baleba last minute goal against West Ham. I have never felt that way about a goal in my life. And seeing it in the stadium, you're just seeing the ball drift away from goal, and then suddenly it's in the back of the net, and you're like, how on earth has that gone in? I'm thinking, well, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. It's a little bit like the Vinny Company thing where Aguero was telling him not to shoot, but he's found his way into the back of the net, and I think the whole of the North Stand was just unbelievably shocked that it had gone in, especially over my side. You didn't know it was in until it hit the back of the net. So that for me, and obviously getting one up on Mr. Graham Potter again at the Amex was especially sweet. Not that I'm bitter anymore, but yeah, and the backflip as well. And I was in the Premier League video for that as well. So get in me. Yeah.
Very good. A very fine podium there. We've done that quite a lot this season. Just you talk about Baleba last minute goals. We've done that quite a few times this season. You know, a lot of people, and fair enough, will talk about goals that we've shipped in the last 10 minutes of a game, but we've also brought it back in the last 10 minutes of games. That's worth pointing out. So a fine podium there, Joe. Andrew, it seems only fair, though, I suppose. You can also have a podium if you wish, or you can pick an individual moment. It's entirely up to you.
I think there are so many moments within this season that have, I would say, created a lot of fine finishing. You've got Matoma, scoring that wonder take from, it's sometimes you can find it really, really difficult because each goal that they've scored has been very, very special. And you've got to look and you've got to say to yourself, that could have been, yes, it's been taken brilliantly. It's been scored brilliantly. But, you've got Danny Welbeck scoring, a beautiful goal from Newcastle in the final few minutes to get us through to a wonderful stage in that competition. So there are so many fine moments within the season that's created a lot of memories, and it would be kind of unjustifiable to kind of just label a couple of them. So I'm going to give, I'm going to say every goal that's been scored this season within our team, they've all had a go almost. Hinchelwood, well, he's something special. They are all something special, and we've just got to hope that they continue it next season and just keep themselves in good shape.
Very good, very good, very good. Joe's done it now, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give a podium. My first one is just a daft moment. It just made me laugh, and it still makes me smile even now. The scenes after João Pedro's penalty against Manchester United, where Joel Veltman's waving the flag around, Lewis Dunk's down with cramp. It was just one of those moments that is still just, it just makes me smile. So that's definitely one. Another one, again, Joel Veltman getting Declan Rice sent off. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. So far, it's it's been sort of like those banter ones. I've just seen Phil's comment, Solly March being back again and scoring against Norwich. That was pretty spectacular. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I think that's probably the moment of the season. Solly March coming back after his injury. He might have only been on the pitch a short period of time this season, but seeing him come back and scoring a goal was genuinely, tear-jerking stuff. I'm also going to give an honourable mention. I've mentioned it already. The back-to-back wins against Chelsea, following on from the 7-0 defeat. I think doing that over Chelsea twice in a week is very impressive, especially after the 7-0 loss. So, yeah, I think Solly March coming back and scoring against Norwich is probably my moment of the season, but that's just me. It would be remiss, I suppose, then. We've talked about the highs of the season. Let's talk about the opposite end of the scale, the lows. Obviously, we don't do this to be mean. We don't do this, to pick on anyone. It's just about giving balance, because you can't have highs without having lows. So I'll go first this time, Joe. Save you, because I don't want you writing to HR. And I'm going to avoid the 7-0 thumping from Forest. That was because that's an obvious one. So I'm going to leave someone else have that one. Mine's going to be was it the Wolves or the Leicester game with Matt's FIFA pass? Wolves.
Wolves, yeah.
Yeah. The Wolves game for me. Oh. And I just felt so sorry for Matt's FIFA. So sorry for him. Because that game was just there for the taking, and we let Wolves come back into it. And for me, again, being pretty slightly biased because obviously living in the West Midlands at the moment, that was a moment where I was just like, oh, for God's sake, for goodness sake. And I was fuming after that. I was genuinely fuming. And then in hindsight, I feel really bad at how angry I was at Matt's FIFA. Because obviously he was just so distraught about that, and it was so nice. Because I'm going to caveat this now with a positive. It was so nice to see him come back and then play against Wolves later on in the season and put in a man of the match performance. That was huge, absolutely huge moment. So I'm going to give the Wolves game my low point of the season. But again, just putting that caveat in there, and how good it was to see Matt's FIFA come back and put in a man of the match performance against Wolves in the return leg. So, Andrew, I'm going to come to you now, because otherwise Joe's going to keep filing complaints against me. If you had to pick a moment or some moments that were sort of the low points of the season, what would you go for?
Stating the obvious, it's, that is one of the lows. I've had the privilege of going to a majority of these away games this season, and I've seen some really, I've seen some really good performances, and I've seen some really, really kind of bad performances, but we've still managed to get something out of it. I just feel sometimes that whether the players are up for it or whether they're not up for it is, it needs to be shown on the pitch sometimes. But there's a whole mixture of emotions when it comes to seeing, how good we can really play and how bad we can really, really play. And it's, I think there's just been games where we've not been there, where we've not been 100%, and we've let ourselves down. And I think it's shown by the end of the season because of the amount of points that we have dropped, where we've had winning positions, and obviously we've lost it from that point of view. Leicester's a great big example. You go 2-0 up in this, you go 2-0 up, and and you allow them to come back into the game in the last 10 minutes of the game for no reason whatsoever, because you think the game's over with. So that was a pretty, that was a low moment to walk away from Leicester, knowing that we've just dropped, we've dropped 2 points, but there are other situations that just kind of, overall the season has just been, I would like to have been a lot better, but it's something they can work on, and and we just have to go forward and just, we're there for them, and that's all they need to know.
That's just it, Andrew, isn't it? That's just it. We can only improve. Michael's put in the comments, Forest was a freak result, and I think that's the thing. These games occasionally do happen. Granted, only every couple of decades, but sometimes you just get torn apart by teams, and that's what Forest did to us. But everything else, you can see there are things that we could just tweak, just improve slightly, and you'd be there or thereabouts. Joanna has said, highs that last-minute Fulham goal, beating Chelsea twice in a week. The Spurs come back. Lows, Palace, going out on the pens in the FA Cup, and the Forest match. Yeah, that FA Cup game was annoying, wasn't it? Didn't turn up until the last 10 minutes. You just sort of think, if you just, bothered to turn up a bit earlier. Phil's also put in the comments about Matt O'Reilly being horrifically tackled at that Crawley game. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Oh, the rage from what's his face as he smirked as poor Matt O'Reilly was taken off the pitch. Disgusting. Glad they got relegated. Michael Palace 3-1 at home, just didn't turn up. Another one. So some pretty moments there, Joe, which aren't very pretty. But which has it been for you? What's the lowest moment for you?
I think the worst I felt was watching us try and break down a 9-man Crystal Palace and have no idea what to do. That was extremely irritating. They were soaking up every single bit of pressure that we were applying, and it got to obviously then we went down to 10, didn't we? But it got to a point where me and Andrew were watching it in the terrace together, and I just looked at Andrew and I was like, "It's not happening. It's not happening. We can believe right to the very, very last minute, but it's not going to happen." And honestly, it was horrific to be watching it in the terrace with a lot more Brighton fans as well. Everybody's moaning. It was just not a very nice atmosphere to be in, to be honest. So yeah, I think my low point was the having no idea how to break down a 9-man Crystal Palace team.
Yeah, it does seem to still be a bit of a sticky point. Doesn't matter who the coach is when you stick 11, or in this case 9 men behind the ball. It's about having those players on the pitch, which we have lacked at times this season due to injury.
I think it's relatively the same for probably a lot of teams in our position that aren't a Man City or a Liverpool that haven't got the budget.
Joe, but even Liverpool, I mean, just thinking about Liverpool, I mean, look at them against Plymouth Argyle. Argyle, were phenomenal against Liverpool in the FA Cup, and they couldn't break them down. Man City couldn't break down Crystal Palace in the FA Cup final.
Very true.
So, sometimes, you just get teams that, like Palace, are very good at digging deep, sitting in, hitting you on the counter. It's, dare I say it, credit to them that, that they've managed to do what they've been able to do. So
I'm reporting that to HR. Jeez.
Hey, I'm here. I'm a truth teller, and I will speak the truth regardless. It's about, I suppose, again, it's just about reflecting on things, moving forward, going, what, we didn't do that, what we could have done against Palace, but we move. So, there's been a lot of highs. There's been more highs than lows this season. And I think actually one of the lows I am just going to give a brief moment of airtime to. And again, because I'm guilty of this, and I probably want to redeem myself somewhat, just the toxicity around Hürzeler and the team on social media after a loss. And I hold my hands up and say that I've been part of that. So that's been quite sad to see. It's part of the reason I took myself off of formerly known as Twitter. I mean, apart from the fact that...
But it's I'm not defending it by any means, but I think it's so easy to fall into that trap of going straight to your phone, wanting to speak to like-minded people, but at the time, it's just not a very good place to put your thoughts into, because if you say one slight thing wrong, it will get brought up again in the future. People will refer back to it. People will call you fickle. People will say this. And I'm not being funny, but every single football fan in the world is fickle. If you lose, you're down in the dumps. It ruins your week. If you win, you're as high as you could possibly ever be. So I think there needs to be a shift in maybe people going at people just because they are slightly more annoyed than them after a win and saying, I'm the best fan. I've been to every game. I do this. I do that. It's like that's not the point of being a football fan. The point is enjoying.
But did you even go to the Goldstone, Joe?
I was born in the Goldstone ground toilets, I'll have you know. I was left there for weeks. Sorry, Mum.
That's not true. But yeah, it's I've always tried to be this season. I've tried to be honest, and I've tried to tell it how it is. So when we win, I praise. When we lose, I reflect, and I try and analyze in the best way I know how. But at times, I have been drawn into that toxicity. So that's probably a low point for me at a personal level. Let's move away then from the season as a whole and let's talk about the squad. We've had a huge influx of players in the summer. We saw a lot of players leave out on loan that perhaps we thought we'd see more of. Valentin Barco springs to mind. So what we're going to do now, guys, and I welcome you, guys in the chat to join in this as well. And you can join in at home if you like. We're going to go down and we're going to break the squad down. Keep, buy, sell. No, we're going to go keep, loan, or sell. So we're going to go down the list. We're going to say whether we'd keep, whether we'd loan, or whether we would sell each player, so we can sort of get a better bearing of what we might need to bring in the summer, which is the next topic on from that. So let's do the old squad list. So feel free to unmute yourself, chaps, because I'm going to be staring at my my document on my page here, and you just chip in. So we're going to start off nice and easy. Goalkeepers: Bart Verbruggen, keep, sell, or loan.
Andrew, do you want to go first?
Look, he's our number one goalkeeper, and I think we would be absolutely crazy to allow him to go. I know we've got Steele, got Jason Steele, and we've got a couple of the other ones. But look, he's okay. He's had an okay season. It's been off and on with him, but he still is our number one goalkeeper, and there is no reason. There's obviously clubs out there that have been looking at him, but at the end of the day, he's a keeper as far as I'm concerned.
The keeper that's a keeper.
I like it.
I'm here all
sell. No, keep.
Keep Bart Verbruggen. I'm just going to put this out there. Obviously, a lot of rumours involving Bart Verbruggen and being wanted by some top clubs. Just both of you, figure what would it take for you to say yes to?
60.
Andrew?
60 to 70.
I think if he's going to go, I think if for whatever reason, I would probably say, realistically, 65, 70,
If Kepa Arrizabalaga could go for 80 million, then Bart Verbruggen is worth 200.
Yeah.
I think with Bart as well, you're buying his potential. He's still so young.
Exactly.
I think he's one of the youngest keepers in the league. So
there's a lot of talent with him.
Yeah. So, and he's not in the Netherlands squad, but
because he's having surgery.
Yeah. And another keeper that's on the list is, so we'll come to him in a moment, Jason Steele. What are we going to do with him, lads?
Keep, for his professionalism. Just to have him around the squad. I think the squad speaks so highly of Jason Steele and how much of a influence he is, how obsessed he is with football, how obsessed he is with being a part of the team. So, keep Stevie.
Agree with that, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the quality, he's got the talent there. There's no reason for him to go anywhere, and I hope he stays with us for a long period of time.
Yeah, and it's difficult, isn't it, when you to get a keeper in that's going to play second fiddle in the Premier League squad. It's a tough one, which is why the next keeper we're going to be talking about, I can see them moving on. Carl Rushworth. As much as I'd like to see him stay, because I genuinely think he is a great goalkeeper, it's for me, he's got to go to get game time for himself. So for me, it's a sell reluctantly. How about yourselves?
For me, it's a loan because, as you say, if he unlocks that potential in the season where he gets loaned out and he can come back in, and Bart Verbruggen, for example, leaves next year for a good fee, then but then you run the risk of him turning into another sort of Christian Walton situation where there's so much potential there and he just doesn't get to be that number one goalkeeper. But for me, just to be selfish, sorry, Carl, we're going to loan you out.
What do you think, Andrew?
I think game time wise, I think he needs the game time, and I don't think he's going to get it with Brighton at the moment. I think having Bart and having Steele, I think being third in the pecking order, I think he's better off if he can get a half decent club to take him on loan, to give him the experience he so needs to be able to further his career. I think it'd be best for him.
Yeah, I think the reason I've gone with sell instead of loan is because I think Jeremy Beadle is better, and I think I'd rather loan him out and then him come back.
Jeremy,
Is his name Jeremy Beadle?
James.
James Beadle. Sorry, James. Beadle. I'd loan Beadle out again to a top end championship club, and then have him be the one that's ready to take over from Verbruggen. So that's where I am with him. The one that's really making me scratch my head is Tom McGill. Why did we've just extended his contract? I don't get it. Is that so we can sell him? I don't know.
Yeah, would bump the transfer fee up a little bit, but that
Thank
just
you,
it will on
watch out, Beadle's about. Yeah.
No, yeah. For me, McGill will be a sell.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't know why we extended his contract because I think it was coming to an end. So maybe unless we've got a League Two club that are willing to take him off our hands, I don't really know. And then the final one for goalkeepers is Sherpen, who has got himself into the Dutch squad and has had a fantastic season by all accounts at Sturm Graz. Andrew, what would you do with Sherpen?
I think I can't see him getting any game time at Brighton. I really can't. I think for his career, I think he needs to either, as much as it might be harsh, I think he might be better off by either being sold or going out on loan again to another club, because he's not going to get it at Brighton. It doesn't matter which way he looks at it. We don't know we don't know what the top hierarchy are saying at the club. We don't know what they're talking about with him in private meetings. So, wait and see what happens with him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Joe? We saw him play in the cup against West Brom all those years ago.
Was it him in the goal? Oh, wow.
Really imposing, 6'7", and is an absolute monster of a goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's a big lad. As you say, he's had a big season out on loan in Europe. I think won their Player of the Season or one of their awards. Yeah, so that's really good. Michael says if Bart goes, keep Sherpen. I would agree with that probably, but I think because I feel we're going to keep Bart. I would loan Sherpen again one more year and then just see what the Bart Verbruggen situation is next year.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to the defenders. I'm going to include one that's out of contract, and that's Tarek Lamptey. So instead of keep, loan, sell, it will be, do we give him a contract or not? So for me, it's no. I like Tarek, but he's too injury prone.
Yeah, it's such a hard decision, isn't it? Because he's such a good guy, and when he's on form, when he's playing at his best, he's one of our best players. But there isn't that consistency, and you need that team that are going to be pushing, hopefully again towards European football. So, yeah, I agree. Probably not offer him a new contract, unfortunately.
Right, South Andrew, do you stand with that, or do you think we should offer him?
I do. Well, yeah, I do. I think he's not getting. The problem is, it's like Joe just said, he's injury prone. So what do we do? Do we sign him on another short-term deal and see how he goes for next season? Do we let him make the decision and let him speak to the club and see what they want to do? As fans, we talk about it as if we know what's happening. Yeah. We don't know what's happening. So it's all going on behind the scenes. But we can kind of express what we think should happen as fans because it's what we do. You don't want him being without game time, but he gets injured quite regularly and he's got to try and, but it's totally up to him.
Yeah.
And the club, of course.
Just seen this on the Sky Sports Instagram that Kyle Walker-Peters is a player that Brighton like a lot and is available on a free transfer. So that could be somebody that we bring in to replace.
We've been sniffing around Kyle Walker-Peters for a long time, apparently. With Tarek, he's a great guy, and as you've both said, when he's on his game, he's brilliant. But he's made of glass, and I think the fact that it was almost like quite fitting, really, that he finished the season injured. He's really good. Seems like a really nice chap, but I just don't see how he can stay fit. And all the time he's here, he's taking up the space of someone like Walker Peters or someone else we could be bringing in. I've been saying for years we needed to bring in another right back. So for me, I think I love your Tarek, but it's time to find pastures new, my friend. Let's talk about Igor Julio. For me, we brought in Boscagli. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Probably not, but we brought him in. We're apparently interested in a guy called Coppola from Hellas Verona. So it appears we are bringing in defenders. We have been linked to another Brazilian chap as well. It'll be interesting to see whether we go with a back three next year or the standard back four. It's worth remembering that at St. Pauli, Hürzeler did operate in a back three system. So that'll be interesting. For me, for Igor, I'd be quite inclined to say sell, just because, again, he's one of those players just really inconsistent. He can put in games where he's absolutely brilliant, and in other games, he's error strewn and making loads of errors. How about yourselves, boys?
Yeah, probably sell Igor. If we are bringing in such good talents who can play in his position, as you say, the inconsistency is there for all to be seen, and has suffered with injuries. So not to say that that's a reason to sell because they're injured, but hopefully it doesn't become a trend. But if he's not sold, I wouldn't be against having him at the club. I think he's a good lad and has had some good moments. So I would sell. Yeah.
Anything to add, Andrew?
No, I think Igor is brilliant at what he does, but it's whatever the club decide. They're the ones that are in total control of this at the moment, with the comings and goings of the club. So we've just got to let them do the process that they want to do, and just allow it to flow.
I think with Igor, because he's left-footed, that gives some sort of value to it. But I think Boscagli is left-footed as well. You're right, Michael. We do need centre-backs, but as I said, we brought in one already. We obviously have a plethora of centre-backs at the club. So I don't know if bringing in new centre-backs might indicate that we are going to part ways, I should say, with some other ones. I think this is a bit of a no-brainer, Joe, for the next one, considering how he performed in the second half of this season. Adam Webster, keep.
Oh, hold on. Let me just sort the screen out. Hold on. There we go. Tom, we're going to go central. Wow, bang. There you go. Hello. Hello. So I think we should keep Adam Webster. His redemption arc is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I probably should have included that in my highlights of the season. Because tune in for the Albies next week for a revelation that's going to blow your minds. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Webdini, let's keep him. He's been back to his best this season. Great to see it. Next up, our captain, Lewis Dunk. Keep, obviously.
Yeah. Club captain, keep. I think he will be the club captain next year. I feel like the on-field captain will be Jan-Paul Van Hecker. But yeah, keep our captain.
Next up, one that we've had contentious with, I think it was one of the first comments we had this evening, Cashin. Brought in, I don't know if it was a bit of an emergency situation, bringing in Cashin. Apparently, we were eyeing him for quite a while. For me, I'd loan him out. I'd give him a loan.
Yeah, championship loan, just to get that game time, see if he can come back in and get up to the speed of what Hürzeler expects from a centre back.
Definitely. With again, we talk about how we're going to set up next season. It'll be really interesting, as I say, to see if we go back 4 or back 3. And then whether we try and find a loan for certain players like Cashin so he can actually play in a back 3 system. So yeah, for me, Cashin, go send him out on loan, give the young lad game time, because I just don't think he's going to get it here. One player that it feels a bit sort of bit remiss to say here is Ferdi Kadioglu. I've forgotten he even played for us, if I'm honest. I'm really looking forward to seeing him back fit and ready. So for me, yeah, keep him about, see what he's about. I'd like to actually see him play this season.
Yeah, definitely keep.
Yeah. So love a bit of Ferdy. We're rattling these off now. Next one's a no-brainer. In my opinion, Jean-Paul Van Hecke.
Yes, as I say, club captain, future club captain.
I'm a bit on the fence about this one.
Oh, go on. What?
Purvis.
Key. But if we sold, I wouldn't be angry. But I would probably keep him.
With Purvis, it depends. So much of it depends. The back line is so dependent on whether we set up in a 3 or a 4. Because if we set up in a 3, I don't know if Purvis will be that wing back. I'd rather put Minter out as a left-sided midfielder with the wing back sort of responsibilities, because he's shown this season how good he is at that role. So I don't know. And Purvis just looks a completely different player when Matoma's not in front of him.
Yeah. There's the inconsistencies of Purvis has been concerning, to say the least. But I think there's probably enough performances to show that he would be a decent squad player. So I would say keep. But again, Rodder's mentioned that United have been linked to Purvis. If he did leave, I wouldn't be angry, and I feel like we could replace him pretty adequately.
Keeping a back 4, sell if we if we go to a back 3. That would be my overall sort of thing. Next up, Joel Veltman. He's one of those players that I want to keep here forever, but I can see him going back to the Netherlands sooner rather than later.
Well, he's signed a new deal, hasn't he? Brighton, he revealed to some media.
Yeah. He's signed a year extension, hasn't he? So
with the option of another year.
Yeah, I think he'll stick around. I can't see us selling him.
I want to keep that man at this club, as you say, Tom. I think he's the most wonderful human being. He is such a lovely guy. So yeah, keep, and carry on the shithousery, please.
Without him, we've got no one who's available to do the dark arts. So we need that sort of level of player that knows how to sort of do that sort of stuff and give us those classic moments like getting Declan Rice sent off,
or punching the ball out of play to give Everton a penalty,
or that. Next one again, I think is a player that's out of contract anyway. James Milner.
Keep. Don't shoot me. Keep. Just because I feel like we could transition him into a player coach sort of role and help him into the next stage of his career. But I feel like the football gods are probably going to point him in the way of Leeds for a nice reunion for him, which I wouldn't be overly angry about. But yeah, I would keep Milner just for his experience.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've certainly lacked at times this season is those old heads on the pitch. Because once Welbeck is brought off the pitch, you haven't really got many players that are vastly experienced, those older heads, and that's at times been a criticism of the squad this season. So having someone like Milner around is useful, but he seems to have gone the way of Adam Lallana in that he's just missed so much of the season with injury. So for me, if he went into the coaching setup, I wouldn't be upset, but if he wasn't offered a new contract, I similarly wouldn't be upset. So
I was going to say he's missed quite a bit of game time as well, hasn't he, due to his injury? So it's kind of, I don't know, it's up to him.
Yeah, again, it's up to him where he wants to go with it now because he must be about 74. Solly March.
Keep.
He's.
I wouldn't care if he was running on one leg. Keep.
Yeah. Yeah, Harry's just put this in about
Yeah.
Milner. Am I right in thinking that Milner can't feel his toes? Yeah, he said in a recent interview that he didn't know if he was going to walk again. So after his injury and his surgeries that he's had, it looked really bleak for a moment. So he might not even be able to play again. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on.
And it's interesting as well that Hürzeler gave him a thank you
Yeah,
appearance at the end as well.
yeah, definitely. Moving on, I'm going down the squad list in position order, but I'm also going down in squad number order, not necessarily like anything else. Gruder, number 8.
Keep. What a player.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
what a
He
player
is
he's turned into.
absolutely incredible. You just feel like every time he gets the ball, something's going to happen.
Yeah,
He gives that sort of anti-knockout vibe of that arrogance of I can progress my team up the pitch. And his set pieces,
yeah.
well, yeah, what a player.
What a player.
He's taken a while to settle in, but he's slowly but surely producing quality that you know that's in him, and it's quite nice to see that as well.
Yeah.
So many people wrote him off as well, but he came in with an injury.
Yeah,
I think that's and as you say, Andrew, adjusting to a new surrounding, a new country. So
it's also what he's done. He's had exactly the same thing that Buonanotte had. He's played out wide when he's a number 10. And then he comes into the centre because of injuries. And you see how good he is. And you're thinking, why on earth were you playing him out wide? But less of that. Let's go for a wide player. Simona Dingra.
inside joke.
Really bad impression of the wacky wailing inflatable tube man that Joe always posts in the group chat every time that Dingra touches the ball.
Adingra is unbelievably frustrating. I feel like I'm the person with the Simon Adingra. What's the word? What's the word when you're against someone? That's thank you. But yeah, I'd probably sell Adingra. Thank you, chat. Thank you for making me feel better about myself.
Adingra, I think I would only keep him if Matoma goes. That's the only reason that I would sort of. He's not hit the heights that I thought he might be able to, and he's so much better on the left. But all the time Matoma's there, so yeah, it's such a shame because as Julie just said in the comments after AFCON, he was named the young player of the tournament. He's just not kicked on, has he? I'll give him pre-season. I said I'd give him pre-season as if I'm in charge. Pre-season.
I thought you were.
I wish I was.
That's why I've got you on this podcast.
Yeah, see what he's like in pre-season, see what the Matoma situation is going to be, and then sort of make that decision there. Yeah, frustrating player sometimes. Here's one that I think he hasn't played for us in a long time. Is Sarmiento.
So I think it's his time now.
Yeah, I think I thought it was really telling that after a positive pre-season, because he had a good pre-season, he was loaned out. I think that was incredibly telling. So yeah, I think I agree with that. Let's I think sell the young lad. Very good player, but just hasn't sort of made much of an impression at Burnley, if I'm right with that. Player that has come on this season, taken the league by storm, Yankuba Minte.
Sell, no. Keep. Yankuba is fantastic. His pace is electric.
Yeah.
There's so much more to come from him. Obviously, there's been moments this season where he's jumped over the ball rather than had a shot. But I think his time will come to be really consistent throughout the season. And young lad, keep.
Yeah, he's electric, isn't he? Some of these, I know that some of these you're all going to be like, why are you even asking this? Carlos Baleba.
Keep.
I know. Again, I know you're probably going to why are you even asking this? It's Carlos Baleba. He's probably literally like the most important player we have. But I'm going through the squad list. Karu Matoma.
Keep. Oh, hold on.
Joe, while you're sorting this, here's another wonder. Mitoma, obviously interest from Bayern. What would the figure be to take Mitoma? We did the same earlier. Let's see. Mitoma, how much would it take?
Oh, such a So he's got one year left in his contract, hasn't he? So the fee will be lower than what people would expect. I would say it will probably take around £50 million to prize him away this summer without signing a new contract.
He's just so important to the way we play. When he's on the pitch, the Spurs game is a classic example. Last game of the season. First half, we were abject. We were kept playing against a team that we were convinced that we were going to be hung over, and we were the team that looked like we'd been out on the lash. He comes on at half time, and he's just he's just so good. Harry, do I regret selling him for 90 minutes? No, I do not.
No, I think he was so important.
We don't need the money.
Obviously, what he brings into the football club on the commercial side as well, people got to factor in. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what Brighton fans would want for him. I've seen Phil say 85 million. I just don't think that's realistic for a 27-year-old who is a year left.
Yeah, it's a bit like McAllister. He went for a really low fee. I think it'll be similar to that. We might get a low fee, but with add-ons, for instance. But yeah, Matoma, I hope not. But yeah, Joe, Diego Gomez, one of your favourite players.
Keep.
What a player he's turned out to be.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it yourself. He's transitioned from the MLS season, which goes right up until
December.
December, and then coming over, he's had no rest. So let's keep him in the fold. Next player up is a player that has really impressed me, Yasin Ayari. At the start of the season, I would have said loan him out. But no, he's got to stay in the first team. He's been brilliant this season.
He's got a lot of quality to him. He's got a lot of quality that still needs to come out of him, and he's a goal scorer. You can see it. It's just giving him the time to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Next one I've got is less of a question if we keep him. It's more of a question, where is he going to play? Mats Vifa was playing at right back for the last part of the season. Obviously keep. For me, it's a question of where is he going to play?
Yeah, obviously you want a natural right back to come in and to fill that role. And we've seen the defensive qualities Mats Vifa holds. So yeah, keep for me, and hopefully we see more of a Baleba and Vifa pairing in the midfield. I think that could be a formidable pairing.
Really good.
Yeah. One has been sort of chatted about quite a lot recently. Matt O'Reilly.
Keep. His quality is there for all to be seen. I think he's again a player that's suffered through the injury that he had from the Crawley game.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right, Joe. He's suffered because of that injury. Yet the player we've just spoken about, Yasin Ayari, has massively benefited from it. You'd probably argue that if Matt O'Reilly hadn't got injured, Yasin Ayari probably would have been sent out on loan, or quite possibly would have been sent out on loan. Ayari's had an absolute barnstormer of a season, whereas Matt O'Reilly's sort of been in the periphery. So it's really interesting development. And obviously lots of clubs are apparently interested in O'Reilly, so that'll be interesting to see what happens here. Moran, he's been out at Stoke City. I'd sell him. He's been in and around sort of like the fringes of the first team picture for a couple of seasons now, not seem to make much of an impact. So for me, Moran, I'd probably be looking to move him on.
It's for his own good, isn't it? You want these players that are coming into that latter stage of being a youth player to go on and have a good career elsewhere and to make a name for themselves. And if that's in the Championship and he works his way up, then I think that would be a good thing for him.
Yeah.
It's about game time more than anything. If they can't get the game time, then they need to be.
Yeah, we've got so many midfielders. I mean, we're about to talk about another one, Malik Yalkuye, who was brought in again last summer. Really good season out on loan. But when you look at the midfield we've just talked about, Baleba, Vifa, Ayari, O'Reilly, Hinchelwood, who we haven't talked about yet. He's got a lot of players. Gomez, he's got a lot of players to get over. So I think Yalkuye he's probably going to get a loan out again. And I think he's probably like the long-term Baleba replacement. That's sort of like my thinking anyway.
I think he's one of those players that it's a wait and see with what happens with. I'm not saying he's a like for like replacement for Baleba, because Baleba's, the player he is, but probably a wait and see what happens with Baleba, whether you keep Yalkuye to have a breakthrough season, and obviously hope that he has a really good pre-season as well to give Hürzeler a bit of a headache.
Yeah, he had a really good season out on loan at Sturm Graz. I think he was their young player of the season, so he's obviously got a lot about him. So I think it will probably be another loan to see where he's at. Hinchelwood, obviously, Gabe. What a blooming player that lad is.
Send him to the under-21s. Not good enough.
Interesting one up next. Facundo Buonanotte.
I don't know. Sometimes I think if he's gone out on loan to Leicester, he's been up and down with them. He's come back to the club and everything. I don't know. I want to give him a chance because I think he's got something within himself to be able to become a half decent player and to show it. And it's just. Yeah. It's just whether or not the club want what the club want to do, whether they keep,
rumor has
so up and down.
Rumor has it that he might be included as part of the deal for the young Greek striker. But I've also seen Abdullah Sima, his name mentioned as well. I think Buonanotte, he's great, but it's like Phil's just said in the chat. Where does he fit in? Because you've got Gruder, left-footed, who's had a great season. You've got Jorginho Ruta. You've got João Pedro. You've got people like Enciso, who we'll be talking about in just a moment. All these players play in a similar position. They play in that hole just behind a number 9. You've only got so many, like even Matt O'Reilly, Jack Hinchelwood. They can all play there. It's just so difficult to see where all these players are going to fit.
Yeah.
So for me, if we can use Buonanotte as part of the deal to get in this young Greek chap who was supposed to be a generational talent, then great. It would be a real shame because I remember Tevez saying that Buonanotte was the most talented player he'd seen since Lionel Messi.
But isn't that the same for every young Argentinian kid that comes out of Argentina? They're all the next Lionel Messi, aren't they?
Yeah. Next up, Mario Kozia Dubre, or Cobra Dudeberry, as we have lovingly called him this season. I really liked what I saw of him in pre-season. Went on loan to QPR, played pretty well from what I've seen or heard.
Was it Blackburn?
Blackburn, yeah. Played really well for Blackburn from what I've seen and heard. Scored a couple of goals. So I think another loan out to a championship side would probably be really beneficial for his development, unless, Solly March is crocked and he's gone. Then just having another left-footed winger on the right-hand side to sort of compete with Mente might be a decent shout. But again, it just depends on the squad and who's available. And then Ibrahim Osman, another player who we saw in pre-season, looked a bit lost at times in pre-season against Japanese opposition, which doesn't bode particularly well.
I would loan him again.
Yeah, maybe give him one more sort of bite at the cherry. I must admit, he's been on loan at Feyenoord this season. I haven't kept up to date with how he's been getting on. But
if he was having a storm, and we would have heard about it.
Let's move on to the forwards then. This is the last little section we'll do because time is running high. João Pedro, interesting one.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, keep him. I think there's no reason for him to go anywhere. I know he's had a bit of a.
I'll give you two reasons that he should go somewhere. Reason 1, reason 2.
Yeah. He's had a bit of a bad season, and he's obviously not played since his red card. I think see what he's like when he comes back, see what the mood's like, see if he's positive about everything, and the club will take it from there because they'll have the last word on it.
I'd sell him. If a good offer came in, I'd sell him. I know he is obviously a very important player, a good player. But obviously, again, this is all conjecture. Obviously, bust up with Jean-Paul Van Hecke on the training ground, missed the last few matches after his suspension was lifted. The elbows, it screams of a player with a bad temperament. Absolute world beater on his day. But I think if we get an offer north of 60 million, for me, yeah.
What's left on his contract? That's there
Yeah.
isn't much. It depends on what's left on his contract at the end of the day. And if so.
Yeah, that would get an interesting one. And again, it will impact on people like the next man, Julio Enciso, who's already sort of admitted that he doesn't know where his future lies. For me, with Enciso, a lot of it almost depends on João Pedro and what happens with him. But again, he's been another frustrating one.
I would sell. I think he's one of those players that wants to be the main man, and he's not going to be that at Brighton. We've got far too much talent and far too many team players. I think I get so frustrated with Enciso, how he goes about not passing the ball sometimes. Yeah, he's just got married, so congratulations to him, whilst I'm slating him. Yeah, I would sell Enciso. He doesn't give me very good vibes.
Yeah. I think, just the fact that he likes to shoot from everywhere and anywhere. Sometimes it's quite nice to see, because we've all had those games where you're like, for goodness sake, stop trying to walk it in and just have a pop. But he's the opposite, where he will just have a pop from anywhere, even if people are better placed. So, if the opportunity arises, the happiest man in football, Jorginho Ruta. Let's keep him.
Oh, keep and chain him up somewhere so he doesn't leave this football club. What a man! What a man! Yeah. Keep Ruta.
Mr. Danny Welbeck, again, I think is a player that's reached the end of a contract. I'd certainly like to extend that contract.
Did he not extend it?
I can't remember.
I'm sure he's already extended it to be here for another couple of seasons. Yeah.
He said on his Instagram, let's go again next season. So
good. He's just hit 10 goals for the first time in his career in the Premier League. I think he's got to be in a good place, and the fact that we've kept him fit this season is really impressive. I know he's not been able to play all the games; he's missed some. His fitness this season has been excellent. So
I think he's the definition of aging like fine wine.
Yes. An interesting one, Evan Ferguson.
Oh, that is an interesting one.
I would keep him.
I'd loan him, but the Championship this time. I just think he needs to get his confidence back. He wasn't very good for us. He didn't do anything for West Ham. It was the wrong loan move. The club should have sent him to the Championship so he can get minutes, get his fitness back, get his goal scoring touch back, and come back with some confidence.
He's lost his way. He's lost his way a lot.
Yeah, and I get why they sent him to West Ham, because linking up with Potter, so I get the logic in there, because then they know he's in safe hands. But he needs a proper full season loan. Send him to someone like Southampton, who are going to be competing at the top end of the Championship next season. Get him back. He's still so young. We don't need to rush his development. Give him the right opportunities at the right time and let him develop, like Liam Delap did. Delap played a season in the Championship, did well enough, and then was obviously found his way to Ipswich and then to Chelsea. We know what he can be capable of, but you need to just nurture that instead of going, well, he's 21 now. Why isn't he doing what he was doing at 19? Just send him on loan to the Championship. Just let him chill. Let him score 30 goals in a season. Come back a better player. That would be my 2 cents. Last 2 players in the forward positions. Abdullah Sima. I think that's a no-brainer. We sell.
Yeah.
And then finally, Greek Dave, Stefanos Tsitsipas. I can't remember how to pronounce it. Tsitsipas. Thank you. Yeah, someone did mention that. So it'd be interesting to see what he does. I'd keep him around if we loan out Ferguson.
Yeah, that's a good shout, to be fair. very much depends on all the other dominoes falling into place. But I would probably say for now keep him.
Yeah.
And have him around.
Yeah. I just think, again, it's one of those players that if he's in and a bit like Cozy Dewberry, if he's in and around the squad, sort of playing in the cup games, getting some minutes, then when Welbeck does need a rest, you've got a player who can kind of step up because assuming Pedro's still around, obviously Pedro can fill in that role. Ruta, hell, even Jack Hinchelwood could do a job. So it would just be, it's such an interesting summer in terms of who we're going to bring in, what we're going to see. Are we going to see a change in formation? Because if we are, that is obviously going to impact which sort of players we bring in. Really interesting. But I've tried to include the majority of like the squad and those on the fringes. The only other player that I'll just briefly mention is Harry Howe. I've loved seeing him on the squad sheet.
Keep him around.
Keep him around because I'd love it if he could just find his way into the first team like his cousin Jack. That'd be lovely. Whew. Yes, I did see that one of Undav's prized possessions was an Adam Lallana Brighton shirt. I thought that was really nice. That was really, really nice. Dennis Undav having that Lallana shirt.
Just to touch on Julie's comment, I think we could see maybe a little bit of Freddie Simmons next season.
Yeah, there's quite a few like loan players. There's quite a few of the young lads who've sort of made their way onto the bench this season. Quite probably, well, in all likelihood, because of the injuries that we've had, and it has meant that for the most part, we've had to rely on players that are quite young to sort of step up. But surely that's the point of the under 23s. And part of what makes us an attractive proposition for bringing those players in is that you can find yourself in a matchday squad. You come on, a bit like Jack Hinchelwood did, and you find yourself suddenly being a regular in a Premier League squad. I think we've got like some of the best minutes across Europe for young players. I think we're in like the top 6. So
wouldn't surprise me.
That's brilliant. Someone else has mentioned Charlie Tasker. He's been on one as well. Joe Knight's been part of the matchday squad. And it's so pleasing to see lads from the under 23s getting onto the bench.
I think as a club, I think we bring in a lot of young talent, and we like to see how they progress through the ranks to see if they can reach it to the top of their game, and then and see if they can reach it to go into the first team, because we're very good at that, and we're very good at mentoring them as well. And that's what the club does. That's what they're about. And it's they buy these players from Europe, wherever, who aren't getting enough game time. They bring them in, and it's kind of and we do see sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's nice to be able to see different talent come through the door, and and see if they can do well for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And just Rodders and Phil, in regards to Barco, he was loaned out with an obligation to buy. That was a weird one. But no, you're right, Andrew. I think is what makes us such an attractive proposition, to young players across Europe, not just in the UK as well. It's why we're able to compete with clubs like Manchester United and Liverpool and Chelsea. That players want to come to us instead. I mean, look at Caicedo, look at Evan Ferguson. They chose us when they had the option of other clubs because they knew that they'd get game time here. And I think that will continue to be our model. Obviously, we've been linked to this young 17-year-old Greek chap who's supposedly worth about 40 million euro. Watson as well. Of course, we brought him in.
Yeah, I was going to say Watson's coming.
Where does he fit in?
Well, he's another bright prospect that's going to do well for the team. Okay, where does he fit in? But I'm sure they've just gone and brought him, so he clearly is some. He's been on their list for a while, so watch this space with him and see what he does.
Yeah, I think he'll obviously get his opportunities. So it'll just be so interesting to see how we set up this season. Will we continue to set up in the 4-2-3-1? Will we see a more 3-4-3 that he was using at St. Pauli? So much of it depends on just how we set up, because that's when you suddenly can get players like Watson and Gruder on the same team, because you can play them as 10s behind the number 9. So yeah, just so interesting, so exciting. That's the great thing about pre-season and the off-season. You're left guessing because you've got nothing left to do. But you, dear viewer or listener, you have plenty to listen to and to view, because over the next couple of weeks we're still going to be coming at you with our regularly scheduled content. It might just not be as regular as it has been this season, of course. We will, of course, come to you with news as and when it does happen, but we're also going to be bringing to you the Albies. The Albies, for those of you who don't know, are the Albion Obsessed end of season awards, where we will be dishing out our very own coveted Albie trophies to the players that have done a jolly good job this season, including some of the villains of the piece as well. So yeah, that's going to be coming your way over the next couple of weeks. So don't forget to get your suit out, give it a bit of a steam, your nice dresses, because you have to dress up posh for the Albies.
I will be wearing a dress. I will be wearing a dress. You heard it here first,
you, Joe. You do you. But as we hit, where did Tom and Joe finish in the FPL? Phil, I picked my team on the first match weekend, and I don't think I changed it again.
Yeah, so I'm very much the same. I think I finished like 85th out of 85.
Yeah, I don't know. I gave up. I'm not like Dagan. I'm not someone who like sits there and does it all. I just no. Rodder's glad we're not doing a summer tour. Yeah, agreed. I saw a really funny thing about Manchester United. Of course, which is hilarious. Never said it's Manchester United. But part of the big thing this season or last season, when they introduced the whole sort of no more FA Cup replays, which are a huge thing for clubs lower down the football pyramid, because they can bring in so much more revenue. But they got rid of them to make sure that the big clubs didn't have too many games to play. Season finishes, Manchester United jet off to Southeast Asia, where they lose 1-0 to the Asia All-Stars. I think it's just fantastic, and it's just so ironic, because we couldn't possibly play a replay against a team in League Two, but we're perfectly fine a day after the season ends to jet off to Southeast Asia.
It's a disgrace, as Mikel Arteta would say.
It is a disgrace.
It's a disgrace.
But somehow it's all Joel Veltman's fault.
It is, yeah.
It is. But no,
they've already got their pre-season sorted out, haven't they? They've already got their first 2 games at the beginning of August. So
yeah,
Southampton and Wolfsburg, I think it is, that they've got lined up. So
yeah,
it's
going to be a fun time. We'll of course keep you updated with news, transfers, kits, all that jazz. Because I don't know if you know this, viewers and listeners, me and Joe, we love a good football kit. So I hear that next season's number is going to be blue and white, but keep that under your hats, guys, because you're not supposed to know. But as we've hit 90 minutes, it only seemed right to say that's full time. Thank you very much, listeners and viewers, for joining us on this live edition. Thank you for all your comments and your opinions. They are, of course, always welcomed, and we heartily appreciate all the support you always give us. Thank you to Joe and Andrew for joining me this evening as well. Don't forget, of course, to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you have not done so already. Because if you haven't, you're really missing out on some really top-notch content. Joe has something to say. Joe, I'm not back at school until tomorrow.
I'm sorry. Sorry to give you that PTSD. I just want to say, because you always thank us, Tom, and you always thank the viewers, but we don't ever thank you. Tom, thank you for being the most wonderful host that the Albion Obsessed podcast could ever hope for, and we very much appreciate you, sir.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I just like to hear the sound of my own voice, if I'm honest. No, I joke, of course. No, Joe, that's very kind of you. Thank you ever so much. I just hope that when I move down to Cornwall, my internet connection allows me to continue to be part of the podcast. Otherwise, I will just be joking like this, and you won't. Yeah, I sound like a robot. So that was my impression of Bad internet connection. Another zinger from the Albion Obsessed podcast team. So you don't get this with the other podcasts. They're all like professional and stuff. And we're just here for the vibes. We are here solely for you guys and for the vibes. And on that bombshell, I will bid you a good night, wherever you may be, whenever you may be. We'll see you again next time. Take care.